All right. And that takes us into, as they say, the terminology, seg one of the show. Seg one for us is old Donald Fagen coming back at us with the smooth music. And I believe Matt gets to handle this bio, correct?
I do, yep. So in the opening montage, you heard a clip from New Frontier. I'm sorry, this is Donald Fagen's album, The Nightfly. I don't know if that was mentioned, but the opening montage, you heard a clip from New Frontier, and now you're going to hear a clip from IGY.
What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free.
Okay, so Donald Fagen's The Nightfly comes in at number 98 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, number 9 in 1982, number 657 of all time. It is Donald Fagen's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, and he did not make the Rolling Stone list. So as I think John mentioned earlier, we covered some Steely Dan in previous episodes. One full episode, one cold listen, and one emergency cold listen that Josh and I did.
A frozen listen.
Yeah, the frozen listen that we did. Was it Can't Buy a Thrill was the
Asia.
And then Asia was the proper episode, and then we did Gaucho. Right, Gaucho was the emergency one. So
AKA
this is
yachts and cocaine.
Yachts and cocaine. That's right. Yes, lots of yachts, lots of coke. So this is Donald Fagen's first solo album. It was released on October 1st, 1982. And this album is known as an early example of a fully digital recording in popular music. So this is one of the first fully digital recorded albums. And a little history on Donald Fagen. He was born on January 10th, 1948, and in New Jersey. And was it Passaic? I think I'm saying that right. Passaic, New Jersey. Is that near you, John?
No, it's North Jersey.
North Jersey.
Heading up toward New York. Yep. I was
North
Central
Jersey boy.
Jersey. Yep.
Got it. So around the age of 10, his family moved to the suburbs in Kendall Park in South Brunswick, New Jersey. This was not something that
very famous throughout the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s for the roller rink Kendall Park in it, where yours truly played some street hockey. So it is kind of in the middle of nowhere, as much as you can be in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey. Too.
There you go. And he was not happy with this move. He later recalled that, quote, "It was like a prison. I think I lost faith in my parents' judgment. It was it was probably the first time I realized I had my own view of life." End quote. And as it come to find out, this is a major theme in this album. The Nightfly was inspired by his upbringing in this suburban area of New Jersey.
So Kendall Park would probably seem rural to Donald Fagen, especially considering what Passaic is, which was more of a New York City culture. However, rural in the sense of New Jersey is always, of course, you need context that you're only so rural, right, in New Jersey. But it is a more bucolic environment.
Got it. So he was interested in rock and R&B at a young age, but when he was 11, a cousin of his introduced him to jazz, and this is kind of where he just falls in love with jazz overall. He goes to the Newport Jazz Festival, and he became a self-proclaimed jazz snob, saying that he lost interest in rock and roll and started developing an antisocial personality. And so he would regularly take the bus into Manhattan to see legendary jazz musicians such as Charles Mingus, Sonny Rollins, Thelonious Monk, and Miles Davis. He picks up the piano and the baritone, which he played in his school band. And he graduated high school in 1965. He then enrolled at Bard College to study English Lit. And that's where he met Walter Becker in a coffee house in 1967. And Walter Becker, of course, is the other main member of the band Steely Dan. So that's just there. Not a ton of history on Donald Fagen, but he's certainly into the jazz when he meets Walter Becker. And
what
they
is
form
the
Steely
baritone?
Dan.
I thought that was just a way of singing.
No, the baritone's a brass instrument, and it's kind of like a mini. It's basically like a mini tuba. It's got 3 valves, and it plays similarly to a trumpet, but it's got a deeper tone to it.
Is it shaped like a tuba or shaped?
It's
like
kind of got It's it's not as big, obviously as big, but it's kind of you hold it upright over your shoulder, and the bell is above you. So
interesting. Okay.
Yep. So anyway, if you want to hear more about Steely Dan, go to our episode on Asia. We're going to fast forward. So basically, Steely Dan breaks up in 1981 after somewhat of a falling out between Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. This was in part due to Becker's drug addiction. And Fagen decides he's going to go off and do his own record. He brings many of the musicians that were used in previous Steely Dan records onto this album. So this is kind of like a Steely Dan, take 2, kind of album. That doesn't sound sonically all that different from what Steely Dan was doing. But the most, like I said before, what this is mostly known for is the digital recording nature of this. They also used a couple of new recording techniques or different pieces of recording equipment that were never really used a whole lot before. This included a 32-track recorder and a new, what is called a Wendell 2 drum machine. And I guess the band members had trouble aligning the equipment together, and they actually had to call in a representative from the company 3M, which is the manufacturer of the 32-track recorder, to come in and do so. And they eventually decided to actually send some of the band members to 3M to take classes on how to align this equipment themselves.
Oh, wow.
And on several occasions, Fagen was just like, guys, let's just do digital. This is a pain in the ass. But the other musicians convinced him to stick with the digital. So he did that. This album was hard to record. Usually Steely Dan recorded live, but Fagen recorded several overdubs for this record. And that made it even more challenging along with the new equipment. But they finally came out with a record, and like I said, the lyrics are a little bit more autobiographical and less biting than Steely Dan records. That's due to the fact that Walter Becker's not really in the band anymore, and he was kind of a little bit more of a I don't know if he was kind of had a little bit of an edge to him, a little bit more than Fagen did, at least in terms of the lyrics. And this album's also a little bit more jazzier than Steely Dan records. So it's known as it's widely considered one of the best recorded albums of all time. Audiophiles love it, and it's very pristine production. It was nominated for a Grammy as Album of the Year. It did not win. That actually was taken home by Toto with their album Toto 4.
Nice.
I don't know if we're covering
down
Toto.
in Africa.
Yeah, seriously.
I can imagine that was also an immaculately produced album.
Yes. This is the time of that. So Fagen, that was basically all I have on this record. He released 3 other solo albums. The most recent one was 2012's Sunken Condos. And he still tours today as Steely Dan. He's like Steely Dan is touring, and he's really the only member because Walter Becker did die several years ago. So that's about all I have on the Nightfly, and I think we'll start our takes with John this week. What do you think of Donald Fagen here, John?
So I'll be honest with you, I was prepared to hate this album because it had a lot of features.
Well, you didn't like Steely Dan, really.
I didn't dislike Steely Dan, but at no point with Steely Dan did it transcend to like, I love this album, right? Can't Buy a Thrill was probably my favorite, and then Asia would be second, and so each album that was going, right, got a little bit more. I mean, I hate to use a cliche term like yacht rocky, but it definitely. I mean, you just call it the Gaucho album, yachts and cocaine. So there's something to that. I liked this album more than I thought. The first time I listened to this album was actually, it's true story. I listened to this on a red-eye plane overnight. I figured let's give it an initial listen. And I said, it's called The Nightfly, so maybe it's a theme. And it does have the feeling of like an Insomniac's, like music, when you're staying up at night and you're thinking, kind of the vibe. There is a little bit of that. And I've made mention a lot of times of night albums in the time that we've been doing CTS, and there isn't a specific sound that I associate with a night album. It's just sort of albums that seem to hit better at night, right? And the one I always, there's been many I do, but the first I can remember ascribing that to was like Scott 4 by Scott Walker. This doesn't sound like that, but there's something about an album that feels like it was designed to be listened to at night, and that's kind of lyrical content wise and sound wise. I feel a little bit of the theme I got for this album, because it does have a little bit of the idea of someone staying up and pondering life a little bit. Even the photo on the front is a guy who's in like a dark area, sort of listening to a record player, and he's got a cigarette, and it seems like he's at the end of a day and he's unwinding a little bit. And songs especially like Green Flower Street and The Nightfly evoke that theory. I don't know if you guys got that vibe from this album.
Well, that album cover, he's got a microphone there. He's like kind of like a DJ, and if you look at the clock, it's 10 after 4. And it's not 10 after 4 in the afternoon. It's a late night, and it's supposed to kind of represent, because that's what he would do, is listen to like stations at night as a young kid, teenager, whatever. And he would like stay up late and listen to these jazz. Yeah. So he's kind of like an homage to that on the cover. Yeah.
So it's 4 a.m. that he's
correct. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't even see that on the clock, but it makes sense because I got that. And he, by the way, that was a theme for stuff that he did in Steely Dan too. He would make that, and I even remember it wasn't like a part of Steely Dan that like they'd all do drugs together like all night and listen to music. Wasn't that one of the albums we covered? I feel like that was part of the creative process. Was let's do a bunch of drugs late at night, and no judgment there and stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't say this album transcended to me to wow. I get why audiophiles like it because the production is immaculate. Yeah. Like it almost feels as if like you're like when we edit the podcast at a much smaller level, Josh. But when you get particularly inspired and you're mixing the audio and trying to get it just in the right things, but you realize maybe I've got an hour's worth of time for that, and you realize there are some people that can spend weeks and months doing that, and you get an appreciation for how intense it seems with an hour of doing it. And I get the feeling that Donald Fagen has a little bit of that like in him or people around him as well. So there's a sort of a perfectionistic sound to this as well. But the music sounds so leisurely and casual that it belies, it's an interesting juxtaposition, isn't it? Like casual, easy listening music with this very methodical sort of production to make it sound so breezy and casual. So I think I'd give this a slight thumbs up. I mean, I can talk about this more. I just don't want to step on things. But I think I would give this a slight thumbs up because completely inoffensive at times. There were some earworms in here, especially IGY and Ruby Baby were the two that really got stuck in my head. The second time I listened, Walk Between the Raindrops, the last song, also embedded itself in my head. So, and that's a sign of a good record for me, is when I stopped listening to the album and then bits and pieces. And in this case, it was bass lines kind of stuck in my head after I was done, which was kind of the case with Steely Dan too, come to think of it. So,
yeah.
What do you think?
I have a slight recommend on this as well. I took a glance, and the personnel on each of these tracks is like insane. They're like all like the best studio musicians of the time on this album, and that's par for the course with Steely Dan. You were right, Matt. This is kind of like an extension of Steely Dan. It is, I guess. I'd have to listen to the albums back to back, but I agree. I think it is slightly jazzier, and it almost feels like a modern for 82 jazz album in some ways. It's got this light feel. I know, John, you said at night, listening to it at night, I got the same vibe. I thought of it as like an album or a performance that you would hear in like a smoky club or something at night, and that I think that's probably what he was going for.
I felt like it was even more intimate than that. Like, I didn't feel like it was designed to be listened outside of your space. I felt like it was designed to be listened in like a home, private environment, kind of, is the vibe I got from it, yeah.
So like a late night radio DJ too, that's kind of also based on the cover.
When Matt told that story, it makes sense, because that, without even knowing that story, Josh, honest to God, I didn't do any work, that's what it sounded like to me. Like as if you were listening to a guy
like
playing,
Delilah.
Yeah, we talked about Quiet Storm, right? Like music that it's like kind of a little bit like that. Like it's 3:00 and we're helping you wind down. You know, you have your cigarette, or you wake up. You know, you get out on the porch. You know what I mean? Or you're just laying, sort of in your thoughts. And you know, in a time pre-cell phone, internet, every cable channel, you know, and you kind of had to find stuff to occupy you, but you didn't have all of these instant vessels. So putting on an album was one of the high stimulation environments, right? So it's kind of funny to think about that now, because now it'd be like, I'm going to go on my phone or go on the computer, or, you know,
right,
even drive to get McDonald's, or so, yeah, like all kinds of things. There it was like, all right, I'm going to listen to music or read a book or take a walk, you know, watch one of the 6 channels on TV. So
yeah, the channels that end at midnight or whatever.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's only about 6 and half of them, you know, are probably not even playing anything you want. So
yeah, and this album is really all about the vibe for me. It's very smooth. There's a lot of instruments on each song, or a lot of different instruments and sounds. You've got horns on IGY. There's some organ, synth. There's like this on Green Flower Street, which is the second track. It's got like this, like, I think it's I don't know what they're called, but it's like the metal tines that you played on the drum that are like the like forks or whatever. That like ta 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 ta. That's like what is. It's like this jazz beat on Green Flower Street that I really liked. Ruby Baby has piano, and there's some harmonizing, and it's kind of like a more upbeat, fun tune. And then you've got a ballad in Maxine. The 2 songs that got in my head, John, were New Frontier and Nightfly. So it's interesting that those weren't ones that you named. That bit in the chorus on Nightfly where they go, an independent station, WJAC. Like, I kept saying that in the foot of Mount Balzoni.
Yeah, maybe that's why I was able to connect to the radio vibe, because that was in there, come to think of it. Yeah,
it takes its time, but it's like a really fun song to listen to. This album kind of won me over, I think, in the way that the Steely Dan albums did. And I agree, Walk Between Raindrops has this upbeat tune as well, and it's got a Miami setting. The themes on the album seem to be kind of like, you know, almost like nostalgia, or writing about like love in the past, or missed love or something like that, or unrequited love, and then also setting, like Walk Between Raindrops is kind of like a beach vibe in the Miami sound. They're talking about driving around Miami or something, and it is it's just it's kind of a relaxing listen. It wasn't hard. I'm not sure I would listen. I would like appreciate like individual songs popping up as opposed to listening to the album straight through. I think it would work better, or I would appreciate it in the future, like just hearing it apropos of, you know, or on some other kind of mix or something. I think I would appreciate it that way. But yeah, I definitely got the jazz vibes from it, and the talent. He's definitely talented, and this is a very like specific type of sound compared to other albums that we've listened to. He's filling a niche, and probably some other artists, in that like jazz crossover with like smooth jazz or like soft rock or something. And so I recommend this too. It didn't blow me away, but I respect the personnel and kind of what he's going for, but it's no, like, compared to like Iron Maiden, it's not like blowing my socks off or anything.
You know what this is not, Josh? Post-punk.
Yes, that's true.
One of the rare albums I feel like we've done recently.
Yeah,
it is
really.
Decidedly not post-punk.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Matt,
so
thoughts?
I agree with you guys in that there were several songs or parts of these songs that would stick in my head, or would get there very quickly. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to disagree. That was not a good thing for me. That was an annoying thing. Just because something sticks in your head doesn't mean that's a good thing. This album, my patience is worn thin with the Steely Dan sound. I did not feel this record. It just suffered too much from the production. I know that's the amazing thing about it, but just like, gosh, it's going back to what, as John described with Gaucho, it's that elevator type music, the really soft, kind of production, and it just, there wasn't enough here for me to really to be positive on. I thought there were parts of IGY that was good. I thought parts of New Frontier, parts of Walk Between Raindrops, it was like, okay, but I don't know. I got that the vocals were annoying to me. It was kind of like, and I think that's what they were doing. There were several vocal parts harmonizing together. But it was almost like, they were doing like radio ad bits, and they were scooping the voice level. So it was like, woo, woo, and it's just, it was annoying to me. And it didn't really, I was like, God, I think that I've really given Fagen, Becker, Steely Dan a fair shake. I really did like Can't Buy a Thrill, because that was just, it was a little bit different. It still was a softer kind of production, and all their stuff is a clean production, but that to me was a little bit more inviting. It was a little bit more interesting. It was a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say varied, maybe, but and I was also surprised. I was like, oh, there's some of these songs that have always been in the background that I'm feeling now for the first time. I gave Asia a lot of listens, because I've heard so much about that. I gave that a lot of listens, and I warmed up to that somewhat, I think. Gaucho was kind of there. I think my comment on Gaucho was like, I think if anything, what I've come to with this, listening to Steely Dan and this type of music in this podcast, is when I hear it now, I'm not so like vehemently against it the way that I might have been last year, right before we covered it. So I've learned to listen to it a little bit more, and I still feel that way. But this week was not a good week for me to hear this. It's just I never got in the right mood. I didn't want to
be irritated or angry.
No, I don't even know if it was that. It just is like, I didn't want to put in the work to get, I was determined to put in the work with Asia, because I've heard so many things. I'm like, what am I missing? I got to figure this out. And I put this in, and I was like, okay, this could be a similar thing, and I just don't want to do that, man. It just took a lot. It didn't grab me. There were a couple of parts that were okay, but I'm just. Yes, and it's got that feeling, I'm sure, like reading about it after the first listen or two, about like, oh, it's this late night feeling, kind of like, disc jockey radio kind of thing. It's like, okay, I get it. Maybe if I was up at 4 a.m. listening, I'd feel a little different, or if I was in a different headspace. But yeah, man, this is it's still tough. It's still that Muzak type style that's there, and it's zero edge, and bits and pieces, dribs and drabs. Certain songs, like Josh said, throw them on a mix or something. Okay, but yeah, I was done with this week. So wow. I'm gonna be a thumbs down on this record. Yeah.
Matt is not the Nightfly. Huh?
Yeah, no, I'm the Dayfly.
In honor of Kendall Park, where Donald Fagen hated the thing apparently, and the roller rink that was there, that I have very many positive memories about. I do feel a little bit of the Steely Dan, Donald Fagen ethos is, many a person had their first loves at Kendall Park. I remember one. They do always feel a little bit like they cheat you a little bit, so maybe you thought you were going to get to second base, but you really only get to first base with Steely Dan, and you're left unsatisfied. Yeah. So maybe my roller rink analogy is that you get there saying, this might be my first time I think I'm going to touch boobs, and instead you just get a kiss on the lips a little bit, which is lovely, but it doesn't give you more. Is that a good analogy for you?
Yeah, that works. And it's just one of those things. It's like, I've heard so many people that I know and respect, and their taste in music, and just like singing praises of this, and it's not gonna. It can't get through to me like that. So it's just gonna have to be that. Big up to them for all the production work is absolutely phenomenal. It's nothing against the musicianship. He's totally a talented guy. It's just one of those things. It didn't jive with me. I could go back and listen to Asia. I could go back and listen to Can't Buy a Thrill. I think I'd leave it at that. I don't hate them. But I would not go back to this record. And who else agrees with me? Well, in a way, Donald Fagen, because according to him, he's never listened to this record since it's been recorded.
Really?
So, yeah, that's what he said.
Has he been sleeping better? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, he just never went back to it. Yeah.
So to extend the analogy, if we use the bassist analogy, right? So first base is Donald Fagen, Steely Dan. I would say second base is Motley Crue. You know what I mean? I would say third base would be Iggy Pop. and Sex in the Bathroom is like Serge Gainsbourg. So would that be the lyrical equivalent of what gets you to East to the Bases, or do you guys want to advocate? Because like I feel like
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring. Is this? Are you talking about me, or are you talking about?
No,
like,
you know how like when you ran the bases, right? You know what I mean. You know the analogy.
No, I understand the analogy, but like.
Crew.
Yes, yeah. Two Live Crew is a good one. Yes. So it's just I was saying like I used that, so I was thinking to myself, what would be second and third? Like Motley Crue's aggressive enough that it's like but it's still kind of comical.
Okay.
Third base you got to be pretty bold, right? To do it at the roller rink. So that's kind of Iggy Pop. Nightclub in Sweet 16, right? But then to go all the way in the bathroom, it has to be a certain level of gaudy. And I'm like, what albums do we listen to that had that level of like
Ace of Spades?
Sleaze. I still think Ace of Spades is like second or third. I feel like you just need somebody.
Dude, he wanted to bone a 13-year-old.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but it's got to be the sonic palette.
Not extreme
with the
enough.
like. It's just you know what I mean. Like you have to the artist has to be someone that you So I don't know how to. I think the Serge Gainsbourg one comes to mind immediately. That to me is like, is the kid. Yeah. So. Anyway. So
I guess. Is this a band that you? I mean, I guess all bands are discovered, but do you respond to this type of music right away, or is it just like something that grows on you over time? I'm talking about like this yacht rock type of Steely Dan.
I'm sure there's both. I'm sure people love. Dude, this stuff sold a ton.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the All Music guys love it. I mean, they did a damn.
That's true.
And then it's also making a comeback with like Gen Z because like it's the smoothness and the anxiety busting properties, I think, of it. I mean, you've heard probably recently that Steely Dan's having like a renaissance of
really?
coming back. Yeah, I mean, it's been like they're being cited as like a band. They're being sort of repurposed as one of the substantive acts of the 70s and 80s by younger people. Kind of like when you'll hear like Gen Z and they'll say like the Backstreet Boys are iconic, and you're like, wait a second. Like I lived through the Backstreet Boys. They're fine, but there was nothing iconic about them at the time. But if you 25 years later and that song, you don't know a lot of others. So but no, do I respond to this? Like no, it kind of washes over me.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
And obviously Matt in particular doesn't respond to it because he had a visceral dislike there.
In order to kind of get there, I was like, I kind of like this. I had to put in some homework. So which is okay. I'm not against music homework. It's just I gotta.
Is that like kissing any of the Michael McDonald either? Because you stayed away from the smoothness of Michael McDonald.
I did stay away from the smoothness of Michael McDonald. That is true. But yeah, I liked him in Peg. I liked that song. Peg.
All right.
Well, I have a feeling Steely Dan fans are going to really hate Matt after this segment.
That's okay.
You know what?
I was trying to be respectful. And at no point in my panning of any album do I ever say this band is totally shit, right?
Yeah.
And they suck.
Yeah,
it's all like look, I appreciate certain things, but as far as just like if I'm going to put this on, am I enjoying this? No, I'm not enjoying this.
I just get the feeling there's going to be comments like, "You're an idiot. You don't realize the production on this is standard. The Ace modulator 765.
Yeah,
can you hear it in this? Do your homework." I feel like that's going to be
I've done enough homework. I'm good. I trust you. I trust you, audiophiles. You know what you're talking. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I still don't want to listen to it.
Do me a favor, audiophiles. If you've been annoyed by Matt, please send comments so I can funnel to him with different stuff, so I can make sure.
I am a good guy. I'm not like a jerk. I'm not trying to. But it's I'm sure there's stuff that they don't like that I do. So
that's true.
That's why this is all wonderful. We can just share our thoughts and people can take it however they want.
Speaking of audio files, the CD was released as a format in October of 1982. I read this week, so that's apropos of this